say do not be conformed, I want us to do this line in your mind. And I'd like to take this back to your own life. Not even to your life of your practice, the life of how you look at yourself. When you get sick, when your loved ones get sick, when you are truly praying for somebody to be healed, when you're going on these missions and seeing things that you cannot even touch, what do? The world says, you know what? Advance more, do more, discover more, treat more of human achievements. How do you handle it? So I'm going to say that, you know what? Don't take two extremes. One extreme we already talked about, which is completely rejecting God and only believing in materialism as the cause. But the other extreme is do not ever consider the supernatural as an excuse for lack of competency. Never ever, supernatural intervention is not an excuse to be not taking care of your health. It's kind of this analogy of the guy who is, you know, the house is flooded and he's on the roof waiting for God to send him a boat or to rescue him, and he's praying, God rescue me, God rescue me. So he sends him a boat, he sends him another boat, he sends him third boats, and the guy says, no, I'm waiting for God to rescue, I'm waiting for God to rescue. And then at the end he drowns, and then when he meets God in heaven, he says, you know what, I thought you were going to rescue me. And he said, I sent you 3 boats. He didn't take them. So you can't just, you know, completely ignore your health and assume that God is going to take care of it. But on the other side, the world comes at us right now, just like those faith healers whose states have now made laws against the parents from invoking the power of the Lord because they deny their kids simple treatment. Never, ever, we would want to be in the situation that Christian professionals would be labeled as less competent because they believe in the supernatural. I'm going to say this again. Never, ever allow our belief in the supernatural to be an excuse for lack of competency, lack of effort, and lack of excellence in our jobs. You cannot go through a procedure or your day-to-day's work and you have a failure and you say, well, God didn't intervene. There are times when you're going to fail. There are times in my career, people die on me. But when they die on me, I cannot say because it was a mistake of mine, well, God didn't want them to live. That's wrong. So those are two extremes. The extreme of complete naturalism and the extreme of putting everything on the supernatural. When you look at the word miracle in the Bible, the word miracle, and one of the most amazing Gospels that talked about miracles is the Gospel of John. But there's something very interesting about the Gospel of John when they talk about miracles. He does not name them miracles. Can anyone tell me in the crowd, what was the name, what was the term that was given to the miracles of Christ in the Gospel of John? Signs. Signs. So I'm going to ask you, and this is where I'd like to wrap our tension of natural versus supernatural. There is a miracle happening. What does this miracle point to? What is a sign of? It's a sign of life. Life. You know what the problem is? And I've said this in many of our conferences before. We now take life for granted. 100 years ago, we would have not been able to wake up in the morning and know if we're going to live. You get an infection before antibiotics, you could die. And at that time, you would invoke the supernatural as much as you would have ever done. At this point, you wake up with a fever. We don't even think twice. You take an ibuprofen, you take an antibiotic. For God's sake, I always said, you know what? We've got every single insurance policy that you can name it. You've got a medical insurance, you've got a life insurance, you've got a disability insurance, you've got a car insurance, you've got a house insurance, you've got a long-term insurance just because if you get a paraplegia, so you have a place to stay when you're old. Tell me with all these insurance policies that you have, why would you even think about God? We've taken our life for granted. The miracle that I want you to get out, the sign out of this, and this is the conference that would really take people like you back to live it. Because our world right now does not appreciate this sign anymore. Why? Because everyone has taken it to itself. It's my life, I do with it what I want, I'll live it to the maximum, I'm going to please myself. But this life, be stewards of it. I vividly remember our first mission to Ethiopia. We had one of an anesthesiologist from the UK. He actually was a senior guy, you know, he was not young. And they were in the OR, and he was helping with an OB, and they had an emergency C-section, and the baby came out completely blue, not breathing. And literally, the nurse at that time took the baby, who was not breathing, put him on a table, covered him. That was simple. And this anesthesiologist looked at this, was shocked, like, what on earth are you doing? And then he took the baby and started suctioning him like no other, started patting him on the back, started giving him oxygen, started working with him. And it's like the nurse is like, okay, sure, do what suits you. He kept doing this. And the 5 minutes became 10 minutes, and 10 minutes became half an hour. And at that point, the staff around, the Ethiopian staff said, you know what, this guy's crazy. They left the OR. They left the OR, left him by himself in the OR. For an hour and 15 minutes, this senior anesthesiologist fought for the life of this baby with resuscitation and brought him back. And it's very much like what Mina said yesterday. It's like, you know what, they come out not breathing, khalas, done. This mom can have 10 more. But this life, that's okay. This is really worth an hour and a half of my time. To me, that was an amazing experience just to witness the reaction of the Ethiopian staff to how this physician valued life. So number one, value life. Value your own life first. Don't take it for granted. God sends us messages every day, whether it is in the US, whether it is in Europe, or whether it's in Egypt, people in a heartbeat. And it's kind of amazing to me, and I always, don't get me wrong, I feel bad when people die in these accidents. But why are we celebrating their lives after they died? We should be celebrating who they are. We should be celebrating every one of you at this point. You are the image of Christ. You're the agent of God. Everyone in this room has to take their life, their professional life, their service life, their family life, and take it to that next level. I want to hear about it, not when you die, God forbid. I want to hear about it now. That is an amazing experience. So celebrate your life that you have and the life of the others, because everyone has that image inside them. That's number one. Number two, if you truly are convicted in your heart that life is so precious, and that is the miracle. That is the miracle. Because when Christ came and said, I came that they may have life and they may have it in abundance. It's not just a trivial life. It's not just, a weak life. It is abundant life. If you truly believe in that, you ought to pray for it. I can tell you also in my life as a cardiologist, for the last 14 years, in the first couple of years, I might have mentioned this to you guys before, I would refuse to pray for my patients, partly because I said, you know what, I don't want to get emotionally attached. I think the best service that I can do for my patients is to be the most competent interventional cardiologist that I can be, and I'll help them. I will not even, hold any effort. But praying, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done, is like, just going on, on the OR table. Because I didn't want to get too emotionally attached. I felt it was like, you know what, I don't want to do that. Until one day, in the hospital system, when we have acute heart attack, the way that it happens is that we have a pager, and that pager just beeps on, and you get a code, and that code tells you just get out of bed, drive as crazy as you can. You got to be in the hospital in 20-25 minutes, because the patient's heart, you have to put the balloon up in a certain time, okay, to open their artery. So you're timed, and also outcomes depend on that. So it's okay. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. It's one of those days. All right. So I get up and I go, and usually when I'm going, because it's 3 o'clock, I'm really tired, I'm gonna fall asleep. So I usually put on, some spiritual songs. I put on, tasbih, I put on something, and I crank it out so loud that I can, really stay awake. For some reason that day, I didn't. And it was kind of one of those beautiful nights. It was snowing a little bit, and it was just this gorgeous snowflakes coming down. I had this amazing sense of peace, amazing sense of God's presence. 3 o'clock in the morning. And then I get another page, and I look at it as from the ER, and it's like, that's odd. That's really odd, because usually the ER doesn't give you any information about the patient because it's irrelevant. At this point, you just got to wake up, go to the hospital, show up, take it from there. It's all systematic. There's a system. But then I get this other page, and I look at it, the ER, and the ER physician is paging me and saying, please hurry up. It's a 30-year-old mother of 2 babies, of 2 kids. She just had a baby. And anyone who's in the medical field knows that women after birth can get what's called a coronary dissection. Their artery tears, and it behaves like a heart attack. So she had what's called a coronary dissection, and she was having a massive heart attack. And she just had a baby a couple of days ago, and she has another child. my heart sank. I was scared. Because at that time, I was like, you know what, God, don't get me wrong, life is life, but it's different if you're doing it on an 89-year-old, oh, he had his time. But a 30-year-old young mother, I don't want to live with that. And at that time, as I said, it was very peaceful, and I could feel God's presence. And God at that time, almost in my heart, talked to me and convicted me. Pray for her. Pray for her. Pray for yourself. Pray that you would be able to do the job. And it's like, who are you not to pray? Do you think it's just because of your skill you're going to make it through? So then I went to the hospital and I met the husband, young guy, amazing. And like, I'm the one supposed to, tell him, like, don't worry, be okay. I found this guy, amazing Christian guy, puts his hand on my shoulder and said, Doc, I'm praying for you. He didn't say, I'm praying for my wife. He's like, I'm praying for you. And my heart sank at that time. You know why? Because I was praying prior to this because I didn't want to live with the guilt if she would die. It was all about me. And that was wrong. This husband was far faithful than I was. He prayed for me. And I didn't have the guts to pray for his wife. And since then, who am I not to pray for my patient? Who am I not to pray for this life? Who are you not to bring in the supernatural, even though you might have all the natural advances from here until eternity comes? Who are you to believe that the gift that as God has given you is our name, that we've built the tower to live the dream? As Christian healers, and especially very well-trained Christian healers, this lie, trust me, you're going to go through it. When Christ restored life, he restored health. Sometimes we get into this mode in medicine, in dentistry, in physical therapy, in any specialty that you're doing, in pharmacy especially. I feel a lot bad for pharmacists because, when you're all day just dispensing medications, you don't get that interaction as much as you want it because your pharmacy is requiring numbers from you. You know what's the problem? And I've termed this, that we have gotten into this transactional service. It's a transaction. You come to me, you give me a prescription, I give you the medication, move on, next, come. I've got a clinic patient, 15 minutes, I'll see him next, move on. Dental cleaning, get done, move on. But the life of that person that Christ said it's abundant, I could care less. I could care less. I vividly remember the story of a young 25-year-old who came in with a massive heart attack after a dose of heroin. And it was a massive heart attack. He was playing basketball, had it on the field. And after, a couple of days, I was asking the nurse, is there any family? Because I didn't see anyone from the family. I said, no. There's no family stopped by. So on the third day, I kind of stopped by. The guy's like, James, where's your family? And he doesn't answer. So I asked him, do you want me to call someone? I was like, we noticed for 3 days, nobody has visited you. And you just had a massive heart attack at 25 years old. Do you want me to call someone? And his eyes start tearing up. As like, I've been kicked out of my family. I didn't live a good life. I've been doing drugs, I've been on the street. My dad kicked me out. And I've been on the street now for the last 10 years, since I was 15 years old. I haven't seen my dad or my mom or my younger brothers, my younger siblings, since I was 15 years old. I don't think they would want to see me. Was he alive? Yeah. He had a heart rhythm on the monitor you can see. I'm going to ask you again, was he alive? No. Was he restored? One of the most amazing things about this, picture and the woman bleeding and Jairus' daughter. One of the first things that Christ told him after Jairus, after he raised Jairus' daughter, is like what? Give her to eat. Restoration. The woman could have been, and it's amazing, when you look at actually when Christ encountered the woman and said, "Who touched me?" This happened after she was healed, not before. She already got the healing. If Christ was thinking in transactional medicine, we would have never heard about her story. Because technically, before she touched him, before he confronted her, she was healed. Job done. But why did he turn around and confront her and say, "Who touched me?" There were a couple of reasons. Number one, so we can learn of her faith. But number two, so she would be in front of everyone in the crowd, accepted. Accepted, done. Your isolation is done, Habibdi. You can be restored again. So I'm going to go back and ask you this. The miracle of life that you're living at this point, whether it's your life or the life of the people that you serve in church, the family that you serve, or your professional life, are you doing transactional service and that's it, move on? Or are you restoring life? Totally different concepts. The world at this point, by the way, is catching up. Slowly by slowly, we've got great, amazing people in the hospitals, like social workers, like case workers. What do? Their job is amazing, by the way. They try to do a job that we cannot do as healthcare professionals. They try to restore people into their life. Because, by the way, God, if any one of you has dealt with a patient who has a stroke or a paraplegia, it is miserable. It is miserable. And you know what? You're helpless. So trying to restore some sense of normality at that time is really hard. Nature has been given to us as a tool. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above proclaims his handiwork. Science, medicine, healthcare, our system, our advance, our genetic, our amazing advances are given to us as a glory of God, and it proclaims his handwork. But it is a sign for life. I praise you because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. I hope that you come out of this conference not conformed to take life for granted, not to take your profession for granted, not to take your education for granted, not to take your calling for granted, not to take the service that you're doing as a matter of convenience. When you can do it, you can do it. When you can't do it, it's okay. Not to take your patients for granted, that if you can help them, they'll be okay. If you can't, don't. Not only pray for what you can offer them, pray far more for what you cannot. I vividly remember a couple who are in their 90s. And the guy came in with a massive heart attack, and he was 92. And when we did his diagnostic angiogram and did his first initial, tests, it was beyond repair. It was hard. And he was like mentally not doing well. And it was like 11 o'clock at night. And his wife, who's like 9 years old, just this amazing, beautiful soul. And I asked her, do you have any family? And apparently all their kids were out of town. She had no one. And I go in and I say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that we don't have an option. I wish we could. I felt our inadequacy at that time. We're not gods. We can't solve everything. And I was like, at that time, it was like, the usual courteous physician interaction. Not expecting an answer back. Is there anything else we can do to help? And I was like, okay, just whatever, like a cup of water, please. She asked me, could you pray with me? Could you pray with me? We've been married for 75 years. I've been expecting this moment. It's like, don't get me wrong, I'm 90. He's 92. I know it's going to happen. But at this point, without any of our kids, without anyone, it's 11 o'clock at night, I just need somebody to pray with me. I was not expecting that. Because I was expecting, like, what? Is there anything I could do to help? Just being polite. And at that time, it was really an amazing experience to pray to God for something that you cannot do anything about. For something that you as a physician, as a health system, as a entity, because you represent the best of this world's medical advance, right? At this point, that line of separation between natural and supernatural, you hit the wall. You hit the wall. Yes, you could at that time, like the other family, pray for a miracle. She was not asking for a miracle. But she was still, despite the fact that she was not asking for the intervention of the supernatural to change the natural, she was asking for the support of the supernatural at that time. Isn't that amazing? A lot of times we ask for the supernatural to interfere in the natural because we want to change the natural causes. But a lot of times God does not will. Would we still call for that? Do not be conformed. As you guys heard it over and over again, you're some of the most talented, blessed people in the history of the Coptic Church. Educated, have privileges, have facilities, have opportunities, have amazing things in front of you. Your life is a dream for so many. Will you value it as the miracle? To him is the glory forever and ever. Amen.